Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Life, Liberty, and Truth. Your host, Christian here, and Jared.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
I remember to introduce you this time, so that's good.
Yeah.
So today we are going to be taking one of our recommended topics, and we're going to be talking about gender roles and the nuclear family. So we're going to get into a couple different things with this, whether it's fatherlessness, single parents, divorce. We're going to go into a biblical role a little bit, and let's start off by kind of defining what a nuclear family is. So the dictionary definition of a nuclear family is a couple and their dependent children regarded as a basic social unit. So when we're talking about the nuclear family, we talk about a man, a woman, and their children. And so all along history of at least America and into European history, Western civilization has kind of gone into this ideal nuclear family as the kind of backbone of civilization. It's the best way to learn. It's the best way for children to grow up. It's the best way for society as a whole. And so, Jared, if you kind of want to start getting into kind of the biblical family and why the biblical and the traditional family is not only just the backbone of America, but it is also the best way to have any kind of family or any kind of social structure.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, we've talked about we've lightly touched on our religious beliefs. You know, Christian and I, we're both Christians, and we strongly believe in man and woman, child type family, nuclear family. We support that, and the reason why is because God has, what do you want to say? He has created that kind of family for a purpose and a reason, and He supports that. And that's basically how we, from the very beginning, you have Adam and Eve, right? Like, at first Adam was, by himself, but then God realized that, or saw that Adam was, lonely. Like, he didn't have anyone to be with. And I think that's obviously relatable as humans because, nobody likes being alone, especially when it comes to relationships too, But so in Adam, in that sense, God made Eve, from Adam. And then that was basically the first marriage after that. And so you can clearly see that God supports marriage, greatly. And he's definitely against, single parenthood and those kinds of things. Not against it, but that's not what he intended for.
Yeah.
So.
And when we say single parents, we're not talking about like, we're discouraging it in the way that it's not ideal, but we're not saying that if you are a single parent that you did something wrong or that it's unfixable and you're a terrible person. No, that's not what we mean. I want to put this out here before we start that it's not the ideal way, but it still works. I know plenty of people who have been single parents and that have made it work and have made it great.
Yeah, of course.
And sometimes things happen. Sometimes there's more to the circumstance than just kind of what meets the eye. And so we're not bashing single parents when we're talking about this. We just want to explain why the nuclear family is ideal, and that when you have this problem of single parent households, that it really kind of strains society and hurts not just the children and the people involved, but the society as well. And as far as nuclear family goes, we talk about it from a biblical perspective, but we're going to point out too that even if you're not a religious person or you're not faith-driven, faith-based, that this is still the ideal way you want to be raising your family, and that why it's just better for civilization, because it goes beyond just religion. Right. But this is better for society as a whole, no matter what your beliefs are. So, go ahead.
And so, yeah, you can kind of see that in just the culture of America. You don't even have to, see it from a religious standpoint, but just kind of seeing America, like not too long ago, a few decades, the late 20th century, after World War II and Vietnam War and all that.
60s and 70s, sexual revolution.
Yeah, you had, the nuclear family was definitely the traditional thing in America. And now you can see today, now we're in 2020, that a lot of people don't support the nuclear family. And a lot of people, especially children, are being greatly affected by that. And so, real quick, I just want to read a verse from Mark chapter 10, verse 5. It says, "It was because your hearts were hard that Moses wrote you this law." Jesus replies, "But at the beginning of creation God made them male and female. For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." So, that's what God has always intended for, men and women, is to be united in one and raise a family. And that's one of the things that you can see that in America we're struggling with, is that a lot of families don't hold those kinds of morals, if you will,
and
or
values.
Values. And so, not to knock on single parents, a lot of them do a great job. I'm not trying to say that they don't, but I think in general, if we're going to talk about America, a lot of people struggle with that. So,
and I think it's important to kind of talk about too how when America has always been at its best is that when it had this nuclear family intact. Now you can argue, kind of going back, that racism in the South and stuff wasn't always great, and it wasn't great, but you can see the progress that America has made in the last centuries, and the society as a whole, just the way that they viewed things, less crime. Crime rates have gotten higher now. You see more problems, behavioral problems, and there's just an increase of kind of everything as your morality breaks down. And this, like we said, in this sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s when this kind of started, and we see America as a whole, as a people, our morals and our our guidelines, the way we live, has decreased significantly. And so I think that's kind of an important thing to note when we talk about the traditional family and how really society is a reflection of the home. And when your home isn't good, you're not going to be raising good children. You're going to be setting a bad precedent for the people around you, and it's really going to reflect on it's going to reflect in how society is. Yeah. And so one of the things that I kind of want to also talk about, we talked sexual revolution, 60s and 70s, this kind of free-spirited sex with whoever you want.
Baby boomers.
The baby boomers. That was a big breakdown of now you kind of have kids here and there with whoever. You're kind of no longer settling. You're not going to have the same values, and those values are going to be passed down onto your children. Do you have any comments on that, Jared?
Yeah, and also with that, how do I want to say it? In those kinds of times in the 60s and 70s, marriage was definitely the goal. You wanted to be married, you wanted to have kids, you wanted to have a house, and, have a good, steady job. That was the thing. And so now you're having people basically having kids together, but they're not married. And I think that's the issue. You have a lot of young people basically having kids. And, I think that could be part of the issue, especially with single parenthood. That seems to happen a lot because these single mothers, they end up having kids at a really young age, and they don't have really any stable economic resources to support them. And so I just wanted to touch on that part, is that 50 years ago we really valued marriage, and I think a lot of Americans still do, but now you see that not only are people don't value it, but they're actually against marriage. That they see marriage as a bad thing.
And so I think this is a good spot to kind of start talking about single parent homes and fatherlessness, and kind of the issues that this brings in general. And so I have an article here from NPR.org called Poverty, Dropouts, Pregnancy, Suicide, What the Numbers Say About Fatherless Kids. And so when we're kind of talking about fatherlessness and single homes, most single households are fatherless households. It's the mother raising the children. And so one of the things I want to cite here is from the Department of Education in this article. It says 39% of students 1st through 12th grade are fatherless. Fatherless is having a great impact on education. First of all, it's growing, and the correlations with any numbers of risk issues are considerable. Children are 4 times more likely to be poor if the father is not around. And we know that poverty is heavily associated with academic success. Fatherless kids are also twice as likely to drop out. So already here you kind of start to see, okay, when this breakdown of the family happens and you have single parent households, specifically fatherlessness, kids aren't doing as well in school. And what happens when people aren't doing well, or children aren't doing well in school? They start to get into other problems such as crime, violence, any number of issues there. And so not only does it hurt them at that point, but it also hurts them in the future, because now you've lost your educated workforce. You lost kids that had potential to go and be doctors. You had kids that went and had potential to do this and that. And now because of their home life, a number of issues that kind of play into how they're going to succeed later in life. And that's an important thing, because now you start to have these kids that just aren't being good adults, as kind of the best way I could think of to say it. And you start to have problems with these same kids as when they were younger. They're now getting older, and they're not growing out of these behaviors. And so I think that's an important thing to kind of talk about. Another part of the article, it talks about how it affects girls and boys differently. It says, the research that I have seen says that girls are twice as likely to suffer from obesity without the father present. There's 4 times more likely to get pregnant as teenagers. Now there again, you start to have this cycle of single parent households now come into play, and now you're going to have that same problem with, okay, now a child who is raised in a single household who's having problems now going to have another child who's going to be raised in that same environment and have those same problems, and then the change is going to keep going down, the trend. And so for boys, it says boys are more likely to act out, which is why we're more aware of how they're affected. But if a young girl is imploding, we don't see it. So kind of what I was talking about earlier as far as boys is that they act out. You start having problems with the law. You start having problems with discipline. And when you have discipline issues, that carries on later in life, as far as you're not going to be respecting authority. Going back to kind of the biblical argument, you hear one of the commandments is honor your father and your mother. Why is that commandment there? Honoring your father and mother is so much more than just honoring parents, but it teaches you to respect authority. And so when you don't have a father and a mother there, you don't have that authority structure that God put in place. And so now you have a breakdown in your authority and in your discipline. And so as far as teen suicide goes, suicide numbers increase, drugs increase. And so you have all of these factors that start to play a role in just something as simple as having a child out of wedlock and the father not being in the picture. Now, these numbers are only for a fatherless home, when the father's in the picture, the stats go up. They're much more they're much better than they would be. This is fatherlessness. Now, you still have problems when there's no father in the home, but it's not as severe. And I know, especially for boys like Jared, I think you can kind of hit on this too, is that, boys learn a lot from their fathers.
Yeah.
And so when you don't have that father there, you don't have that discipline, because going into the kind of the gender role part of this is that as a boy, especially from two boys' perspectives, is your mom's always been your nurturer, the one that you've kind of gone to take care of you. Your dad's always been the authority figure,
to spank you.
Yeah, the one to spank you, but the one who teaches
your
you.
Mom.
Yeah, the one who teaches you how to be a man. The one who's teaching you to go hook up the trailer to your truck, the one who's showing you how to mow the lawn, cut the trees, do the hard, nitty-gritty work. And your mom's the one that comes home and makes you breakfast and you come,
yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. And so when you have that absent father in the home, as a boy, it really is harmful.
Yeah, you don't develop those kind of skills that you would if you had, if you don't have a father, you're less likely to have those kinds of skills that another child with a father and mother would have. And so, we're really trying to focus on the children here, children's perspective and how it affects them the most, because, these kids, they're growing up and they're our future, and you can see now, even, millennials, right? The current generation, and you can, probably assume that the future generation next is going to be, there's going to be a lot of single parent homes. I think those numbers are going to increase a lot more. And so, having those skills to be able, those learning skills and those things that you've learned as a kid, not just from your father, but as, from your mother too, it's good to have, because it really does prepare you for, living, your own life and being responsible for yourself. And so I really think having two parents really teaches you that kind of responsibility as well.
Yeah, for sure. And so, kind of move on from that is go to divorce parents, Jared. And so divorce parents, again, is a kind of a whole different set of issues, as far as child behavioral issues, as far as neglect. You're basically, we talked about all these factors of the father not being around. Now, when you have the father around, but you don't have him around every day, then you're going to learn some of these things. But then again, you're not going to be having him every day. You're not going to have that masculine figure in your life to teach you how to be a man. He'll be around sometimes. He's not always going to be there. And then you have the problem of, okay, well, then what if mom or dad gets remarried? And then you have that issue of, you have step-parents in the picture. And, step-parents, I know a lot of kids whose step-parents have become their actual parents. And that's a highly respectable thing. But not all kids are that fortunate.
No.
And for some kids, that's great, depending on, if the dad's a dirtbag and, he's just not a good dude, and you get the step-parent who comes in and takes in that role. That's great. That's amazing. But that doesn't happen to everybody, And so it's definitely important when you're talking about divorce and you kind of have these issues of, of kids acting out again. And then if, say, the parent's close and the child's close with their parent, and then they go and they get remarried, and then sometimes focus shifts away from the kid, and you get that feeling of neglect, especially as children get older. And it just gets very difficult, very complicated.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to read from an article. It's from the Gillespie Shields. Basically, it just has a bunch of facts on both how two-parent homes, like your normal traditional family, how that affects a kid, and then it has facts about how a single father or a single mother are homes as well. But at the beginning of the article, and this is what I'm going to talk about, is it continues to say more and more children are being born out of wedlock. In the 1960s, for example, nearly 95% of babies were born to couples who were married. Today, 40% are born to women who are either single or living with a non-married partner. So there you go. You are now more likely, it's now more likely for children to grow up without a father in their home, or a mother, right? Or their parent being single when they're born. And so you can see, that's 60 years ago, 50 years ago, and you can really see the decline of the nuclear family and the importance of having that. And so, yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that I think that's a crazy number. You had 95% of babies who had parents when they were born, and then now today you have 40%.
Mm-hmm. And the family really is the building block of society. When your family is doing bad, your society is going to do bad. I said it earlier, is that the family is a reflection on society. If you have mothers and fathers in their children's life, especially if they're married and together and have a good relationship, I will guarantee you crime goes down, any sexual crime, any sexual assault, abuse, domestic abuse goes down. Mental illness will go down. And, there's always going to be that minority who just is always going to be either predisposed, or it's just going to happen no matter what, because you're never going to have it perfect. No one is perfect. Life's not perfect. Society's not perfect.
Yeah.
And so you're always going to have those exceptions. But I guarantee you keep the family together, and all of these factors start to decrease tremendously.
Yeah, you can really see how that reflects on, our society today. Of, like I said, 40% of, kids are born, or at least live, without a father in their home, or a single parent, right, or a mother. And so it really does show that, that our society has gone a very far opposite direction of where we were 50 years ago. So yeah, I agree with you completely, Christian, that it really does reflect on the family of how you're born, or not born, but how you're raised. And so, and if you're raised the right way with, a healthy family, a healthy traditional nuclear family, you're more likely to succeed. And that's just, those are the stats there. You can find a bunch of statistics basically proving that point right there, that kids that grow up with both parents in their home, that are supporting them and doing those kinds of things for them and being there, they're more likely to succeed and be prepared for, their own life, and they're more likely to be prepared for a career.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you really got to understand the importance of the nuclear family, and why America needs to, head back towards that direction and correct, ourselves, and try to, help our kids out, our future, society, because it all starts kind of with us just trying to make those changes. And so, yeah, that's what I have to say there, is the importance of the nuclear family.
Well, I think it's time to kind of move away from the nuclear family and into kind of the gender roles part. This one probably won't be as long, but before we start, I want to say another verse right here. Ephesians 5:21-33, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit to your own husbands as the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as the church is head, or even as Christ is head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So, again, I don't want to make this uber religious, but when we're talking about gender roles, especially in our view, a lot of our view of gender roles comes from our Christian evangelical Protestant values. And so when we talk about gender roles and the nuclear family together, the man is the head of the house because the man is the one who cares and he provides protection. And I don't want to sound misogynistic about this, but I mean, I just quoted this verse, and it's not a rule over in the fact as like a king, like everything he says goes, but the men are the head. They are the leaders. Now, there are good leaders and there are bad leaders. We should try to be good leaders. And how does a good leader lead? He listens to his wife. He listens to those around him. And he makes the best decision for his family,
right,
based on what his wife and his partner has said. And so I don't want to dive too deep into that. But that's just kind of a quick version of that. Jared, do you have anything to say on that?
No, I mean, you basically covered that. The man is the head of the house, and you can see that it's being under attack right now.
Yeah.
Like the masculinity is under attack, and it's just when you have extreme feminism, it really does attack masculinity. And so when you have that, when you have men being under or being attacked for just being men and being who they are, and not being who they are, but just knowing that their role for a home is to lead and do these things and provide for their family. Like, you can trace it all the way back to ancient times. You don't even have to be biblical, but the man of the house, he would, leave, go hunting, right? Go, build shelter somewhere, or those kinds of things. And then he'd come back, and, the wife or the mom would tend to the children. She would do, prepare the food. She would do those kinds of things. And so those were just the roles that you could see, and it worked. The men would go out, like I said, and then they come back because they're providing for their family. And, even though those roles are different, both of them are providing for the family.
And I think it's equally. It's important to know, especially, emphasis on equally. They are different, but they're equal.
Right, yeah.
And that's what this whole kind of thing is about, is that men and women are equal in value, but their roles are different, Now, in this day and age, things, I think, have kind of changed. And, Jared, you can kind of press back on this if you think. And I think today, as we kind of move to this more modern urban lifestyle that everyone kind of has, the women's role definitely has changed a little bit. Now, I do definitely think that women are kind of the nurturers, the ones that the kids, that take care of the kids. But I think it's okay for a woman to go and work, because now you kind of have to have that in order to even function in society. And I don't find that negative, but I do think that it's still the father's primary job, and a man's purpose in his life is to work, to provide, and to protect his family. That is a man's purpose. And I think that's something that we kind of see under attack today. And this whole feminization of males and this feminist movement. And I don't want to dive super deep into feminism as a whole, but I want to talk about how feminism itself has kind of attacked the nuclear family and these gender roles. And before we kind of get into that, do you have anything to say on what I just said?
Yeah, and traditionally you had like the man, he would go to work, and you had the stay-at-home mom, and if those roles are reversed and you have a, you know, mom that goes to work and a stay-at-home dad, like, it's, you know, there's no we want to say, I'm not trying to bash them at all, like, that's how their family operates, and so that's completely, you know, fine. But it just kind of shows how different the culture has changed over the course of time, right? And so, you know, if you have both, you know, the mom and dad going to work, like, that's cool too. But, you know, traditionally, like, Christian believes, you know, the man is usually the one that, you know, you see the man as the one that's more of like the provider, and you see the mom more as a nurturer. And so, you know, not that if that's different, it's not proper, right? Not that if your home is different than that, then, you know, it's not a negative or a bash towards you. But that's just kind of how we've grown up and how we've, you know, been taught, you know, as kids growing up, that, you know, the dad's usually the provider, and then the mom's the nurturer. So, you know, those are our beliefs there.
And so, going from that, I think we should start with kind of the feminization of males and this whole feminist movement of trying to, that we don't need a man type thing. But before that, I want to point out that everything that we said, because that family is the building block of society and the representation of society, you kind of see how the family has to come apart before society can come apart. And not to get too religious, but that's the attack that we as Christians and we as believers face. And that's obviously it's the first thing that Satan goes after. And so I want to talk about how this feminization and this idea of that we don't need a man is a way that Satan has kind of infiltrated the family. And so let's kind of start with the feminization, or let's talk about the feminism movement for a second. Just kind of hit the top of how it affects the family.
Yeah. I mean, so again, you just have that aspect of, or that mindset of, oh, a woman can do anything, right? And you don't, like Christian was saying, you don't need a man to do these certain things. And, you know, while you may not necessarily need a man to do certain things, you definitely need a man to do certain tasks, or not tasks, but they have certain responsibilities in their lives that they're supposed to do. And that's the same for the women. Is, I think, you know, I think in a sense, if you're trying to push the men aside and pushing for that, you know, women can do more than men, I think that's a big issue, because men have a huge role in, you know, the family. Because like I said, they're the providers, they're the teachers,
the protectors,
you know, and the protectors from, you know, at least, I mean, as a whole, like I said, you know, just previously, men are the ones that, you know, teach. And not that women don't teach, but they're generally the teachers in their family, and like help raise their kids, but teach them like certain responsibilities that they have. Like me and Christian mentioned earlier, you know, mowing the lawn. You have those kinds of things that you're taught,
those physical
as a kid,
responsibilities,
right? And or just the roles of being a man in your life, being responsible with your money, or, you know, those kinds of things that a man teaches you, or a father teaches you in your life to prepare you, you know, for your life in the future, when you don't really need your parents to nurture you anymore, right? And so if you're trying to push aside, you know, fatherhood, I think you're going to have big issues. And I think it goes both ways, you know, just as equally. But I'm definitely saying that if you're going to push aside fatherhood, you're going to have issues
Yeah,
You know?
I think the only reason that we're pushing more on the fatherhood and is because that's kind of what's being pushed right now with these feminazis, this third wave feminism movement. And I don't want to confuse, when we say feminization or feminism, we don't mean the 1900 voting rights feminists.
Yeah, no.
That is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about like, oh, women shouldn't be able to vote, women shouldn't be able to wear a dress that's above their knees.
Right,
like
yeah.
that's not at all what we're talking about. We're talking about the third wave feminism and when women say, I don't need a man, I can do everything a man that can do, I could do it better. Here's the deal. Women can't do everything a man can do, and men can't do everything that women can do. They
Right.
both have their own strengths that are separate from each other. And that is, again, why the nuclear family is so important, is because together they bring those strengths and their weaknesses, and both of their strengths and weaknesses each complement each other.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about. So when you start saying that we don't need a man in our life, we can raise a family on our own, no, you can't. If that's your mindset, then you have a corrupted mindset. Now, again, like we said, things do happen as far as,
Marriages,
marriage,
divorce,
unexpected death. He leaves, if the man leaves you and he's a dirtbag, then good riddance, That's not your fault. If you get teen pregnancy, things happen, and we understand that. But the mindset of, I don't need a man, I can do everything a man can do, is wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong, like we said, both for the child and for society as a whole. And so I think this idea has also led into how men now are weak. They're feminized. It's cool to not be masculine. It's, everyone's protected. A boy can't go and climb a tree. They ban dodgeball in school. Everything that a boy does. A boy's makeup, not his makeup as in like, makeup. His makeup. His makeup is in like his genetic makeup, the way he was made. Men are designed a certain way. Men are rough. They're violent. They go out.
Well, yeah.
Not violent as in like violent like criminals.
Yeah.
Violent as in they're rough. They play hard. They fight. That's what boys do. And so now you go and you have the society that teaches, oh, you can't go play dodgeball at recess. You can't go play baseball at recess. You can't go play your games. You can't go climb a tree. You can't go do all this stuff.
No tackle football.
Yeah, no tackle football. But that's how boys are made. And so now you're telling a boy that he can't be a boy. And so now you start to create this whole generation of men and boys that aren't what they used to be. Think about if a man, or think if we went to war right now, we would be so weak. It would be embarrassing.
There's a lot of pretty boys out
there.
Yeah,
I'm talking about, that's what I'm talking about, these pretty boys. What was the generation in the 40s? What were those guys doing when they were our age? They're going to war. They're storming the beaches
Willingly.
of Normandy. Yeah, they were signing
They signed
up.
up
Yeah,
to go.
those were men. Not now. These little boys, these pretty boys, they're not men.
In the Revolutionary War, you had 16-year-olds going to war.
Average age of the Continental Army was 17 years old. Average. That's
There you go.
insane, What are we doing now? We're taking TikToks of these stupid dance routines. Jared's guilty of this.
Oh, come on, Christian, no.
Throw him
No.
under the bus.
Oh,
But
man.
that's what we're dealing with now in society. We've become weak, and so that's just kind of the way, again, that kind of the devil infiltrates society, is if you make the men weak and you can disrupt that family system, then you can take down a society easy. And we're already seeing that.
Yeah.
Look at the decline of our society since the 60s and 70s. It's been horrific.
Yeah.
Look at the moral character of people now. Look at what's acceptable. Look at what now we have all this stuff coming out. The pedophile stuff coming out.
Yeah.
You have the Cuties movie coming out.
That's already out.
You know, this is what happens when society starts to decline, and it starts with the family unit.
Yeah, and this is, I don't want to say a wake-up call, but, like, come on, like, men in America are not men, generally. Like, there's a lot of men, masculine men in America, but there's a lot that are weak men. And, you know, I'm calling you all out because I'm a man, you know? And I have that right to call you out like that because, you know, if you're not taking responsibility and you're not taking ownership of what you're doing in your life and you're trying to blame it on others, you know, you have these writers or these people blaming society for how they are and, you know, they're not trying to better themselves. Come on. A real man doesn't point fingers at someone else and say that they're the reason why they're not who they should be. A real man takes ownership. And, you know, I really do. I try to take ownership with everything that I do. And when I make mistakes, like, you know, I'm honest. Like, if I make a mistake, I'm going to own up to it. A lot of men, they don't own up to their mistakes, and that's an issue.
That's not real masculinity.
Right.
Real masculinity is taking ownership. It's going and protecting the weak. You know, I hate the term toxic masculinity. Was it toxic masculinity that stormed the beaches of Normandy, like I said earlier? You know, if that's toxic masculinity, if that's toxic masculinity, then give me all of it you can get. Because people say now, like, oh, masculinity, it's so bad, and, you know, it's masculine, it's men, it's the masculinity that caused people to rape. No, real men don't rape. Real men don't cause crimes. Real men respect women. That's what being a real man is. Being a real man isn't just being like a manly man. Being a real man is going and protecting the weak, and it's going and owning your mistakes. It's taking charge. It's fighting for what is good. That's what real masculinity is.
Yep. A real man runs into the enemy fire, you know? And, you know, a weak man is the one who, you know, assaults an old, you know, lady. Exactly. Or robs an old lady. Or, again,
or sexually assaults.
Sexual assaults.
Overpowers,
you know,
the weak.
A young woman or whatever. Those are not real men, you know? You can have them. You can have them. We don't want them. Real men don't want them, okay? A real man is the one who goes to work, who takes responsibility, provides for their family, okay? Teaches his family to love God, you know, takes his family to church, does those kinds of things, right? Teaches their kids certain morals and values that they should always keep for their entire life, you know? And so, one last thing, again, you just see how the culture has changed men so much. And then it's bad to be a man. That it's bad to think these certain things. And when, you know, it's not. And, you know, I wish we had men today that were the ones that were storming the beaches in Normandy. I wish we were.
Yep.
You know? I wish we still, I'm sure we still do. But that number has greatly decreased. And, you know, we're in trouble because we need men like that in our country.
Now you have a bunch of little video game playing weenies that
play Fortnite, crank 90s. No.
don't see the sunlight for days and go and whine and be lazy, sit on the couch. That's not a real man either.
Yeah.
Real man is going out, doing work, providing, being strong in what they believe in, and protecting the weak.
Yep. Amen.
That's a man. And that's, as far as gender roles go, I mean, I don't think we can really touch on the feminine part because, you know, we're not women.
Yeah, no.
And so I don't think it would really be appropriate to kind of touch on that. I couldn't accurately talk about that as much as I can. I can relate to masculinity.
Mm-hmm. And
I think that if we're talking about true, actual biblical feminism, we have to talk about that in a different episode because that's a whole other long episode where we get someone in here who talks about what it's like to be a real feminist, a real woman of God. what feminism is supposed to mean, instead of thinking that feminism is being better than a man. It's being equal to a man, and it's being different than a man and being proud of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we can wrap up today. Do you have anything else?
No, that's about it, man.
Well, I think that was a good one. Thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. Please follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter. We have, if you want to watch on YouTube, we also have this on anywhere you get your local podcasts. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Because like we said in the last video, we love it. We love being able to spread our opinions. We love it when people are able to listen and get something out of what we say. And that's why we do it.
Yeah.
We do it so that we can spread our truth to other people, and people can hear other perspectives. That's why we do it.
Yeah, we like hearing other people's perspectives too. So I mean, if you want to comment, you want to write us, DM us what you thought about certain episodes, what you thought about what we said. If you disagreed, if you disagree with us, I like it when people disagree with me sometimes, because then I can reflect on that and kind of see, okay, like find a middle ground, and I think it's good to have those kinds of conversations. So yeah, please, message us if you'd like to. I encourage you to, because we'd really like to talk to, people who listen to our podcast. So one last thing, #ManUp. That's this episode
there
right
you
here.
go. Okay, thank you guys for listening. Like we said, like, subscribe, share. We really appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions on future episodes, leave a comment, DM, message us, find a way to contact us. This was actually a listener request, so we love it when you guys contact us. So we hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll have another one out soon. We'll see you guys later.
All right, see ya.